Welcome friends. In this video I'm upgrading the CARABC 12-inch screen with an improved radio preset panel. This panel was provided to me free from CARABC for this installation video to show the swap and also to show the installation of the double-sided tape for the screen. So the first thing I had to do was remove the unit from the truck. Here are the tools required. I'll leave a link in the description to my first video which shows the detailed OEM head unit disassembly, and I'll only comment on a few lessons learned from removing this particular head unit. The first thing is the dash tray, which everyone notes is not clipped in the front. I had previously added a bit of aluminum with slots that I cut out to allow it to clip in, and you can see me removing that here. The next bit proceeds much like the OEM screen removal by pulling off the center console side trim and lifting up the center trim surround underneath the armrest. The second thing I noticed was when I got to the screen side trim, I found that the plastic was very sharp. Here is where it cut me, and here is where I realized that it cut me.
Oh my God.
Trim tools are very helpful here to help save fingers. Anywho, I finished taking apart the center dash and disconnecting all the wiring behind it before pulling the screen out and taking it inside for the swap. The first things to remove are the 6 screws holding on this lower metal cover / bracket with a PH1 Phillips head screwdriver. This is all plastic underneath, so I held the bottom for support to make sure that nothing broke while I was doing this. I missed recording it, but after removing the panel, I needed to remove these 2 ribbon cables by pulling out the 2 white plastic locks on either side of the cable and then lifting the cable ends up and out. Next, I removed the entire lower panel by pulling out the 3 screws holding it in place. Here you can see the ribbon cable ends, which have these little hooks on both sides, which can be tricky to lift up and out. I started to pull out the 8 screws holding on the radio preset controls, and I got them out before realizing that I needed to pull the screen out first to actually get this panel out. So I removed the 4 screws holding down the 12-inch screen and pulled it out. Finally, I pulled out the control panel and the knobs themselves. With almost everything removed, I went ahead and installed the control panel into the new preset plate that CARABC sent me. The installation process was just like the first time, but I found that the fresh plastic was difficult to tighten the screws into, and after it was assembled, I noticed that a piece had cracked. So maybe I should have gone slower or just not tightened it so tight. In any case, I tested all the buttons and they worked great. Before installation, I added the tape that CARABC sent me for the screen. I have not had any problems which would require this tape, but I imagine that the tape was a response to an issue that somebody had. But I cleaned the screen, I cleaned the mounting surface for the tape with alcohol, and I put the tape into place. Next, I pulled out the old preset panel and installed the new one. This was super easy now that the rest of the plastics that I'll be putting the screws back into, they're already threaded from before. Then I reinstalled the screen on the double-sided tape and tightened down the 4 screws to hold it into place. I reinstalled the HVAC controls next using the original 3 screws. Then I could install the ribbon cables, making sure that they were fully seated and then locking them into place and covering them in the heat protectant tape, which holds them down and makes sure that they don't get cut or pinched by the metal bracket that goes on the back. Next, I reinstalled the metal bracket on the back using 6 screws, and that was it. Side note here though, the screen does have some kind of plastic cover on it, which I never saw mentioned anywhere before, and I didn't really notice it until I was doing all this. I left it on because I didn't have anything to replace it with, but it was a little annoying how many scratches were already collected on there after just 3 months of use. For reinstallation of the head unit, it is best to reference my installation video, as I went really fast putting this thing back together this time. And that was it. You know, the buttons work, the LEDs on the board showed through, and all was well. So, final thoughts are that this was pretty easy, and I saw that the units ship with this now, so another check mark for anyone who really wanted those preset buttons. I do feel like the airbag indicator is useful for people with children, and it's great that CARABC is improving the product based on feedback. I do still plan on doing a review at some point, so look out for that, but the bottom line for me is that I love this screen. I could not go back to the old one. And I'm actually annoyed now jumping into my wife's X3, which I used to think had a nice big screen, but even that is tiny in comparison. This truck is my daily driver, and I use this screen with Apple Carplay to and from work, listening to podcasts, audiobooks, and music while navigating with ONX Offroad or Google Maps on this full 12-inch screen. It is still a must-have for me. Anywho, that's all I've got. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.